Hello, everyone. Good afternoon from San Francisco, California. My name is Ethan. Today, we're going to be going over how to program in English. So, I was looking at the state of the economy, the state of where the US is at right now. I think we're at a turning point. I think a lot's going to change in the future. I think, because information and software is essentially free now, I would start a series about, how to use this software that is basically changing how the world works right now. So we're going to start off today with something a little simple. Um, so one of the fundamental things I feel like is happening is that we need a dashboard. That the dashboard with reality is becoming more important than ever. An interface that we can use to talk to other people was social media. So that was the 2010s. And now we're at a point where we have an interface that can talk to reality to see where all data is at all points in time, at the exact point in time. Um, so yeah, the year of 2026, we're more connected, in my opinion, than we've ever been before. We have a greater opinion that can be heard by more people than ever before, and it is because AI is so available. It is up to us to use this technology. Anyway, sorry for the long intro. Uh, so I first wanted to break down how I see the AI tools are going to be used. So, um, in computer science, there is a level of abstraction with all the different topics. So abstraction is essentially you only need to use the highest layer of whatever skill that you learn. And so in real computers, there's different programming language. So here's the hierarchy actually before I jump into it. You have your actual computer, assembly language here, which is basically just binary bits, firmware talking to the transistors and, where memory is stored. So that's all the jargon that computer science people talk about. And as you progress up from hardware, you get higher and higher languages closer to English. So C is, we're starting to get to a language that people know about. Here would be basically Python. So I think in the recent decade, 2 decades, Python has been, the dominant programming language to learn if you want an all-encompassing programming language. And then, I guess block code does count. Scratch.mit.edu for those of you who know what block coding is. I think we're at a point now where you just straight up code in English. You don't even need to know how, like you technically do need to know how to debug, but as long as you understand at a very high level what the system is doing, then you can essentially build whatever you want as long as you don't run out of compute. Today I'm using Claude. I think Claude, Anthropic. I think as of right now, June 16th, it is the forerunner in all of the AI models. So I think I like sticking with Claude. When I run out of compute, I switch to Cursor, sometimes Gemini. Um, but yeah, let's get back to it. So at a high level, the data that I think a lot of what data engineers these days talk about is like building a pipeline, right? I think that's just like fancy wording for taking the most live and up to date data, um, that can exist. And so, here we're just breaking it down into the different data types. Text in HTML is the fastest. That is probably the most optimal one that you want to develop. Images and videos. Okay, so these two, it's a lot more difficult to process these. A lot more expensive. A lot more, in my opinion, wasteful to process. But there is an expression: a picture is worth 1,000 words. Right? One picture can tell you more about how a country or a system works than 10 pages of some really thick PDF. Optimally, you want to get to here. Whoops. Maybe summarize this. Does anyone really read books nowadays? I feel like not. And then map base. I like map based graphs a lot. Graph nodes, graph based views. So graph based views are like folder directories modeled by sort of like this, right? And so instead of folders, you would just have actual physical representations. And I think that tells you a lot more than 10 PDF pages. After you do all the filtering, you gotta get rid of all the jargon and anything. This here is just how I like telling the AI the style. You could choose what your style you want to be. I think Claude, if you don't actually specify, it's not really going to like it's going to give you the default. So I really recommend you specify the style. You could actually use images to tell Claude what kind of style you want it to look like. So say you want, I'm just gonna take something random, right? Gothic websites to look like sort of this. So you would just take a picture from the internet, copy and paste it, create a project in Claude, paste it into here, and then you would literally just tell it, can you emulate the style of this when you're building a project? Okay, so the dashboard. I think this is where things get interesting. There are many ways to do it. I think with at least the 2010s, actually three ways to do it are iPhone apps or just general phone apps, websites, and computer apps. And out of all three of those, the easiest one by far is just making a website because the AI just knows how to do it. Like I've tested it out. And so if you just have a general idea where you want to build something, I highly recommend just doing the general localhost website. You just type localhost into your browser and then it runs it there. And then there's 4 different ways in which the AI can actually transform this data into something useful for you. So let's say you're a quant and you're trying to make a lot of money, like you're trying to beat the stock market, right? So you take all this data from different, data sources, whether it be government data sources or private banking data or your enterprise data that you keep very secret. You funnel it in, and then the dashboard you get will probably look something similar to this, right? A lot of the economic models are not really just graphs. So I think with how a lot of people imagine what economics looks like, it usually comes down to like how a graph like this looks. And I think these have a lot of limitations in terms of, understanding real implications. Like you don't know what CEOs are involved in what, because, these days CEOs are involved in almost everything. You don't know how the people are affected. You don't know what the world looks like. So an Earth map is my favorite because you actually get to learn what actually is going on. As compute goes up, I think we're going to see more and more of what the world is going to look like. Images, video, of course, this is expensive. You don't want the AI producing this. You actually want it to transfer the images and videos you took here into images and video that's useful. The best way to do that is by labeling. Currently, I don't think we're there yet in terms of how well the AI can label things, but yeah, so it is going to essentially be a combination of this, and at a high level, so when I say out types, I mean like the types of what kinds of dashboards will be useful. So in my example of like a quant trying to build an economic model, that would probably go into a productivity / structure. So there are 2 kinds of dashboards, if you ask me. One is about trying to understand how the world works to guide you how to make a decision, and the other is a way to determine how you spend your time, how you spend your money, how you spend your resources. So I guess an economic model could be both because you're simultaneously learning about, the different economic events happening on a daily basis, trying to channel only the most useful information for that day in your industry. And then the productivity structure will look more something like where should you buy, what stock should you buy, or what company should you consult with today. So that is really where we're at right now. And so obviously this is very rudimentary. I'm still trying to figure out myself how to use what kind of dashboards that it will be useful to build. But I quickly built a couple dashboards that I want to walk through today. The first is I call it Global News View. So, one of the useful things I thought would be useful is that just, at any point in time, I want to check what's going on in the world right now. What does the world look like at a very unbiased point of view? If you go to Instagram Reels, it's just reel after reel of something the algorithm feeds you. But that kind of begs a question, like, what does the world look like outside the algorithm? And so what I did, and it's still very rudimentary, is just you tell Claude in a simple HTML file. So you essentially make a project folder. You could do this in your terminal. You do this just with a general, directory in your computer, you create a text file. So hold on, I'm just checking if I have any. Okay, so you can create a text file, and instead of programming in Python, you just specify how you want the dashboard to look. So I guess we could walk through what I did. Okay. I said I would like to build a map dashboard that showcases the latest news of the entire world. So I just told it verbatim what I wanted it to do. You could probably voice to text this as well. You don't even need to talk. You could just have your computer record your voice and it automatically transfers that to text. Highly recommend doing that. Doing it immediately with voice is a lot more painful. Specifications. So yeah, you need to tell the AI exactly what you want it to look like, how you want it to look like. Be very specific. If you're not specific, what's going to end up happening is that Claude or your AI is going to build that app, and it's going to spend a lot of compute tokens, and you might waste it because it's going to build something regardless of how you want it to look. So I highly recommend you specify the exact design, take some images, throw it into Claude as well. Like, throw as much data as you can. So here, throw as much of this as you want into Claude. Technically, try staying away from videos because that eats up your compute power in Claude. But do as much text and HTML as you can, and then images every so now and then. And so, again, just specify the news source. And I really wanted it to... it took me about 4 times to get to this point. There are some debug issues that you could just tell Claude. You literally just tell Claude, please fix the bugs. Whatever happens, you just put it back into Claude and it does it. And yeah, so as soon as you do that, I'm not doing it right now. It's not a live demo, but I did do it, and it created this after about 3 or 4 attempts. And so, I'm honestly incredibly amazed by this. Well, actually, I'm gonna pull out the other one I made. It's called San Francisco News View, San Francisco Map View, and it essentially just takes data from many websites. So I think the problem I ran into is that a lot of websites that have the latest information have paywalls. So if you really want to, bypass it, what Claude does is uses its own servers. But I guess the design choice that the average person wouldn't consider is that I feel like that would break really easily. So actually, I'll add that right now. So something I think you guys should keep in mind. Design. To keep in mind. Here, hold on. Designs, text to keep in mind. Make sure to design for robustness. So what do I mean by designing for robustness? I mean, a lot of what Claude can build can break really easily. If you're not careful with how you design it, then in 5 days, the website that Claude designed will break, maybe because someone edited their code base that Claude takes it off of, or you didn't specify something specific enough. Or I don't really like being dependent on Claude servers too, especially since we've seen Fable and Mythos being shut down by the U.S. government. So anytime you build something, try designing it so you could save it on your computer and it'll be able to run regardless of external compute. External computers, try making it host locally on your own computer. Highly recommend doing that. And yeah, I highly recommend this is the new way of programming. It is very amazing that you can you no longer need to use Python. So, sorry, there's something I forgot to mention. So while you're designing, you could specify the output as an HTML or a localhost. So you just tell it create an HTML file. The entire thing will be built. So I'm trying to see. Okay, here it is. I'm line wrapping it because then now you don't have to side scroll. But Claude generated this entire thing. So all this code here creates SF map view. It creates obviously this is junk. Claude sometimes fills things with junk when it can't find the information, which kind of explains how hallucination works. So it actually also creates a fallback. So if Claude cannot find stories, like the algorithm cannot find stories, then it just creates some random ass news articles that will filter that in anyways, so that the program still works. Be careful of that as well. So keep in mind of as well hallucinations. Hallucinations. Okay. I think the overarching theme with how you design will be, it will be as specific as possible, and don't be afraid to output to describe as much in text form as possible. And what I mean by that is, you know, your .txt file can be as big as you want it to be. The amount you describe your program, well, you can make that as long as you want, and it doesn't matter because that the compute for text is relatively inexpensive. Stay away from videos. I don't recommend recording a video of what you want and then uploading it to Claude. Highly recommend still just going straight to text. Voice to text is great as well, like I mentioned before. But yeah, it will create something like this, or, so this is the part I wanted to mention. You could also convert your .txt English description into a Python file. So Python file. And what that does is it allows you to run Python in terminal. Hold on, let me get my terminal out really quickly. Okay, so here's your terminal. You can just run Python, main.py. That's what it would look like. It's very useful. So if you have something that HTML is very hard to run in, or you don't really need an interface, like let's say your thing is only text to text. Let's say you just take this and you only care about text output, then you just need the terminal, and I highly recommend just using Python for that. I'm not sure exactly. I think for this video, I think I've covered most of my workflow process, not in the most systematic way, but since this is the first video, I thought I'd do it because I think it's we really are living in such an interesting time, if you ask me. Just the fact that we can program anything in English. I will probably post a lot more videos about things I create in the future, things that I think will improve workflows for all of us in this time. And yeah, I think that concludes it. If you have any questions, email or comment.